Carol, yeah.
I'm gonna start what we're doing if that's okay with you, Jess.
I just want to make sure I have everyone. Carly Shepherd,
I think we'll be here for a while.
Martha Prince, and Lori Dykeman. And of course, Karen. Okay.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda was a discussion about education taxes and how they're paid and if they're abated. And I wanted to just report what I have discovered and found out since our last meeting. I have talked a couple of times with Edie Graining. I've also talked with Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And what I found out is that there is no way to abate the education tax without the town being liable to pay it anyway. You can't just say we're abating it. It used to be that the Underhill, Jessica, the Underhill Central District, Underhill ID District had their own abatement process when there was an Underhill ID.
Oh, that's right. I was on the board when we heard abatement. We abated taxes.
Yeah.
They were a municipality, and that's how they were able to do that. And the current school district is not a municipality. So the town must pay by state law. This is all in statute. The town must pay by state law to the school district the amount that's prorated. It's prorated. We collect taxes twice, so it gets paid in 2 installments, and it's irrelevant whether there's been any abatements, whether people have not paid their taxes. All of that is due on behalf of the town. The town actually gets a state that says this is the amount you must pay. And the school district can't change that, and the town can't change that. And the state does not do abatements. So what I've discovered also is that some towns will only abate the town portion of the taxes and will not abate the school portion of the taxes. That's an option for any board of abatement to do. Another thing I found is that we have, as a board of abatement, more broad options than what I had ever realized. We can make a decision if somebody came in here and said, I had some kind of a disaster at my house, and we decided it's legitimate. We can just give them permission to delay their payment until they get their insurance check, and then they can pay it. Or if there was a flood and the homeowners are paying out all sorts of crazy amounts of money and they don't have money to pay for their taxes because they haven't gotten a FEMA grant yet. And they've employed people to clean out their basement and get rid of all the stuff that's been destroyed. Essentially what we can do is we can waive in advance for a period of time that we can determine any penalties or fees. And so if we say, when's your FEMA check coming? And they say, it's coming in 4 months. And we say, okay, you have to pay your taxes within 4 months and there'll be no penalties and fees. We have that authority. We also have the right to abate only a portion of what's being asked if we find that the whole request is not, if we don't agree with the whole request. It's not a yes, no, it can be a gradual, you can abate half of it, a third of it, all of it. I think we could probably even abate more. But nobody ever told me that. So those are the things I found out that directly relate to the Board of Abatement. I wish that there were select board members here tonight, but they'll get the minutes. The select board, this does not concern the Board of Abatement. The select board is legally obligated to raise enough money to meet the needs of the town and to pay the school district, regardless of any decisions that are made by the Board of Abatement. The select board can take out, I asked questions about what are places doing like Ludlow? What are places doing like Montpelier? Towns are actually taking out loans to be able to
pay the school tax?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're not getting enough in income to be able
Because it
to meet
abate so much.
I'm sorry?
Because it had to abate so much.
They had to abate so much. They lost so much property. They're spending so much more money that wasn't in the budget because of
perhaps in advance of FEMA, but they have a cash flow issue. So to cover those expenses, they may be going out and getting a loan.
Yeah.
In part, you're right, Mike. It could be because of taxes they've not yet received.
The select board can also have a conversation with the school board. Essentially saying, we have lost $50,000 in taxes this year. We're in bad straits. Legally, we still have to pay the school district. We can't change how much goes to the state, but the school district has the ability to amend their budget. And they could, at their discretion, put in a new line item and refund money back to the town.
The following year.
No, immediately.
Oh.
They can do a change in their budget for the current year they're in. If they were to choose to do such a thing. But that, again, would be something the select board would initiate. The Board of Civil Authority has no legal concern about how the select board is going to pay its bills.
You said Board of Civil Authority, but you mean Board of Abatement?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Board of Abatement. Board of Abatement has no legal concern about how the select board is going to pay its bills. I did tell Edie about tonight's meeting. She's a pretty busy person, so she may have already 12 things scheduled for tonight. So that's what I've got. If there's any other questions about clarifying any of that stuff, I can try. And if not, we can go on to the next item.
I have a little input for number one. I did send out a little survey to clerks, kind of mostly Chittenden County, sort of asking, how many tax due dates you have. And, it sort of ranges from 1 to 4. But a lot of responses were, I don't know, it's just been this date for years. I have no idea why these dates were chosen. So I thought that was interesting, but there is a lot of variability. There are some towns that only collect in one installment, and Milton was the most interesting. They have suggested due dates throughout the calendar year, and then their last final due date is May 15th. So there's no interest charged until the May 15th due date. That's on. But they treat those as due dates and make their school payments. So it must be the school is paid 30 days after a tax due date. Is that right?
The school is paid 30 days after the due date. So for example, today, I cut a check for $4.4 million to the school board. Again, that's because it's within 30 days of September 15th, first due date of our first installment. But I'm interested. I wonder what the definition of a due date is. Meaning, does Milton then hold the funds that they've received until the actual due date of May and then remit?
he said that they treat, so they have 3 suggested dates where the final May 15th must be paid, but they treat those first 2 as if they were due dates and make the school payment.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
It seems kind of dicey.
Yeah,
You may not get enough.
you're fronting a lot of money maybe.
Right.
Anybody else have anything they want to? Okay, let's go on to what Jessica learned from other town clerks. That's number 2.
Okay, yes. So I went to the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association meeting in Fairleigh. This was in mid-September. And just sort of polled different clerks when I was sitting near them. And I thought it was interesting as far as the reason number 4, which is the one about the manifest error. Initially, it was made by the listers, and now it's interpreted could be made by anyone. Woodstock.
No, excuse me.
Yep.
I think it says in the language now,
Yep.
manifest error of the listers or error.
No, it does not.
It says manifest error. I can't think of what it is. It needs a comma. I know that.
It says taxes in which there is a manifest error or a mistake of the listers. No comma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, Woodstock was like, yeah, we saw that. But we just treat it, as if it's a lister error.
They only allow lister error.
But like it has come up since the law changed, but they've only used number 4 when it's a manifest error by the lister.
So a taxpayer makes a mistake. They don't. That's not a reason for
They
abatement.
don't count that. And Underhill said that they had 3 requests this year for late payment as far as abating penalties and fees, and they were all denied. And so it really wasn't specified what the reason
If there was an error
was
or
being used or not. Some towns have not had that reason number 4 used since the law changed, so they don't know what their town.
when you say the
will do.
law changed, do you mean like
I mean,
1974?
the court error,
Oh,
the court
court hearing.
amendment to the law. And because it used to be actually that you couldn't abate penalties and fees, and I think that changed
That
in
was a legal change.
2012. Yeah.
Error, no.
And then the court case was later on. So I will sort of put those responses together in a spreadsheet if people are interested. Because with this new survey of the Chittenden County clerks, I'm just getting information from them now. Also, in my discussions with other town clerks, there's the role of the delinquent tax collector. So in some towns, the delinquent tax collector is still an elected position. And that person, so with the Underhill School District, Underhill ID School District, they elected their own delinquent school tax collector, and that had been Marcia Reese for years. And she sort of determined, as far as going to tax sale, and the town or the school attorney for them actually prepared for tax sale every year. But the fees collected, the interest and penalties, go to the delinquent taxpayer. The delinquent tax collector. When that's how the position is funded. And so I know in Williston, people kind of caught on to that and they said, wait a minute, this person is raking in, a lot of penalties and fees. So they moved to the town sort of accepting that role of delinquent tax collector, which is what Jericho did at some point.
At some point, before my experience anyway.
And so sometimes the town administrator has served as a delinquent tax collector, and then they kind of oversee the delinquent,
Initiate the process.
the process
Yeah.
for
Tax sale.
tax sale. And, so in Royalton, the delinquent tax collector is still elected. And she goes to the Board of Abatement and says, gee, this person's really trying to make payments. They've been steady about trying to get their past tax due date, their past taxes paid. So she actually recommends that the penalties and fees should be abated.
Is that person a member of the Board of Abatement?
I don't think so. I think she serves as the elected delinquent tax collector. So no, that's not the treasurer is a member of the Board of Abatement.
Okay.
But not the delinquent tax collector. So I don't think she's also a JP or a lister or something. So I don't think she's on the board. It's just she advises the board. So I thought that was interesting. So yeah, the variety grows because of all these different situations. And then like Milton has in their town charter that penalties and fees cannot be abated. So that sort of takes it out of the hands of the Board of Abatement, because penalties and fees can't be abated. So it's really only looking at the principal tax assessed. Although the Milton treasurer said in the case, they did have 3 in the case of COVID, where a discretion was made for them because of COVID related problems in paying their taxes timely.
You mean fees were waived in Milton
Interest and penalty, despite
their town charter saying you can't do that?
Yeah.
How
But
do
if
they,
there's state law that says you can do something, and doesn't that override a town charter?
I bet it does.
It always seems like
That the bigger dog,
right.
the bigger of the hierarchy, which reading the town charter is illegal.
Well, the town charter gets voted on, it gets adopted through the legislative process.
Yeah, I would think if somebody took that to
To
court.
court, it would be proved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
So that's pretty much what I have. I think I was sharing with Mike some of the responses that I've got, and it really shows you it's like all over the map. And it really, when Vermont League of Cities and Towns or the Secretary of State, when they're advising, they always put in that caveat, it's the local board's decision. So there can be 250 ways.
Yeah,
to
the
deal with.
That
local
is
board has more authority than I ever realized.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk about Barre, even though that's not the next thing on the list? Just
Barry does
because
come down as number 4 if you want me to move
Yeah,
up.
because
Okay.
we can talk about grouplets later.
Yes.
As a group.
The grouplets as a group. So moving to number 4, the discussion about Barry's Town Board of Abatement and FEMA recovery versus the town borrowing money. I did speak with the Barry, she's the town clerk and treasurer, and the flood kind of hit just as tax bills and everything were being produced. And so they actually extended their due date to October 2nd. Which was just this past
And
Monday.
that would have been a decision of the select board, right?
Well, I don't know. We vote on those at town meeting. We vote on those tax. I think maybe the governor had a special order about.
Okay, so let me rephrase my, that wouldn't have been a Board of Abatement.
Right.
Decision.
No,
Okay.
no, this is
That's all I care about.
from the treasurer, which she's also part of the Barry Opera House. And I heard her on the radio actually singing that taxes are due October 2nd. This date is new to you and all this. I thought that was
Well,
funny.
that's innovative.
Yeah, so she tries to get people in if they're listening to the radio. So they, as of right now, this is just last week, I actually got to speak with her, and she said they've had over 60 abatement requests related to flooding. The tax due date was extended to October 2nd, and she actually sent an abatement form out with the tax bills, kind of explaining, you know, you can apply for this if you've hit loss. So they're expecting that they're going to have to borrow money to meet the demands of the town. But I think they're also looking for legislative help. And what's interesting is she's actually resigned, or she's not, her term is up in March, and she is planning to run for legislature, for state legislator. So it's something, and not continue as clerk treasurer after 17 years, I think she's been in that position. So I think she's been on our legislative committee for the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association. So, so there may be something in the legislature this next year, kind of looking at helping towns on a statewide level, because the education tax is statewide.
I'm just curious, in the case of Barre, whether they're expecting to defer taxes with the idea, first of all, that they wouldn't be abating, you know, deferring that first date. I'm wondering about the ultimate collectability of those taxes for the town.
Yeah, I don't know what the 60 losses were.
You know, just to, as an add in here, during COVID, I did go and get a line of credit with the community bank in case of COVID, whatever the implications were, with the idea that the taxes may not come in on time, but they would eventually materialize. And so apparently that's what Barre is doing, and a lot of maybe Ludlow as well. Again, just giving that extra dollars to tide them over. Whether ultimately abatement is part of that solution, I don't know.
It sounded like, yeah, the abatement hearings have not been made yet, but the taxpayer has no, it's anticipated that the taxpayer will have no way to pay it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I have for that. It's a process that we're observing.
I hope that the state legislature takes a look at the implications of towns having to pay education tax.
Statewide, yeah.
Yeah, statewide. I don't know. That's just my own opinion. Does anybody have anything that they want to say? We here in the room, but there's a bunch of people out on Never Neverland there.
Everyone's still there, so that's good.
Can folks still hear us?
Yep. I have
Yay.
nothing to say though. Great conversation, everybody.
Okay, well, there's two items on the agenda about, I can't say grouplets.
Okay.
There's two items on the agenda about forming the subcommittee to look into two different items. The first one was to draft language to present back to the Board of Abatement to then be recommended to the Select Board about penalties and fees and a delinquent tax policy. Yeah.
I'd be happy to serve on that. It's an issue that is important to me.
Okay. So that was Kathy. For the people that aren't in the room, is there anybody else that would like to serve on that committee, has an interest in that topic?
I would.
And Peter? So procedurally, I think whoever's on that committee would get together, do your meetings. Those are also meetings that have to be warned and such, I imagine.
No, I don't, they're not a quorum of the board. They're not board,
And we're not
they're not board meetings.
we can't take any action.
How would
It would just have to be.
how would the general public have input into what you're discussing?
I think they wouldn't until something was brought back to the select board or the BCA.
Brought up till the what might be one option would be to have the grouplet bring something to this board for discussion, amendment as required.
I think
And-
that's right. I think you would bring something to the board that would, then the board would recommend something to the select board.
That's what I was thinking.
Or not, or
Or
decide.
not.
Or not.
They could say, no, we
Right,
don't.
Right.
I'm drawing a parallel to, like when we would go out, we haven't done
Well,
any.
the
on this.
inspection committees.
In the inspection, and those were
There,
public.
a quorum is 3 for the Board of Civil Authority.
Um,
For the Board of Abatement, the quorum is either 11 or that special 2 select board, 2 listers, and the treasurer. So those 5 would make a quorum.
So is it legal to have a meeting that doesn't even have a quorum?
It's a group, it's a subcommittee.
It's a grouplet, as you may have heard. So it's not, but it's not, I think it isn't subject to open meeting law.
It was not.
It's like a working group. It's seriously, it's like a working group, not a committee.
So
It's
if we
not
had a 5-member select board, 2 members,
Mhm.
less than the majority, could work on,
a new
they could
tax law.
form a
or-
committee on something. Because they're not a quorum of the board. They can't take any action. They would bring it back to the board. So it'd be the same thing. The Board of Abatement can have a subcommittee or a grouplet. And as long as, they're not taking any action, they're just discussing, and then they can bring it back to the board. for
And in terms of
action.
transparency, the public would learn about whatever the group did, at the same time that the full board would learn about it. And in the same way that the full board could say, that was stupid, we don't like what you did, the public could say, this is great, or that was a mistake, or we don't think you should do this. That's,
I would imagine that if this board approved it, then the board would bring it to the select board. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think that's probably the procedurally. That's how it will go. Yeah, I was just concerned about whether the subcommittee meetings had to be warned to the public, but apparently they don't.
Yeah, not a quorum.
Okay. Is there anybody that is on their computer that also would like to be on this subcommittee? Okay. Do we need a formal motion to authorize this subcommittee? Or since it's not a quorum and it's not, can Peter and Kathy just meet and then say, look what we came up with and present it? Do you need authorization? Do you need anything
well, I
from the
guess,
board?
well, related to that question is my recollection. So my thought is like, Kathy and I can meet whenever and do whatever and walk in here and say, hey, we were talking and we're thinking about, we should all be wearing orange shirts at all of our meetings. And the board can say, that's a dumb idea. Next day, we can suggest whatever. Related to that, I thought that when we had this conversation came up and somebody said the BCA is not the body, that should not come from the BCA. That should come from a group of citizens. And Kathy, if you want to go and do that to the select board, you can go and do that. But the BCA either shouldn't or wouldn't or couldn't, I don't know what the verb is,
Or
be a
Board
part
of
of that.
Abatement, not BCA.
I'm sorry, thank you. The Board of Abatement, the Board of Abatement either, I don't know if it was couldn't or wouldn't or shouldn't be making recommendations about that.
I took that. I remember a comment from Wayne House saying that he would actually support more weight as a select board member of some recommendation coming from the Board of Abatement as a whole
Oh, okay.
than as a.
That got turned, that's what it was. That got turned in my head. Sorry.
But again, I think that's the only comment.
Yeah,
I remember.
and it was Wayne, I remember it was Wayne who said it.
But to your point, Peter, I don't think that the grouplet would require the authorization Because indeed, it can be at the next meeting, here's what you proposed and you'd like the board to act.
Is this making sense to you?
So I'd be willing to serve as a go for, you know, as far as getting info for you.
So when the subcommittee has something that they want to present to the Board of Abatement, they should get in touch with Jessica and say, whenever the next meeting is going to be, can you put us on the agenda? If there isn't going to be a meeting for 8 or 10 months, Jessica may decide to call a meeting.
If it's something that you want to see as a warrant article on the town meeting morning,
The town meeting. You mean the annual meeting?
the annual town meeting, January 19th is the deadline for articles. But if it's something that the committee would be working on, you know, not with that due date in mind, then yeah, then it could go on. I think part of the discussion after the last meeting was when we had decided to form a grouplet in the past. We were a different board and we just reorganized at our last meeting so that we wanted to bring it up again so that, you know, that it was a board, a current board's action.
In reference to your statement regarding the 19th being the deadline of January, who is it is it the select board that actually determines what is to be warned?
So the select board can warn articles. 5% of the voters can sign a petition, so there can be petition warned articles. And in Jericho, if they have a 10% petition signed by 10% of the voters, the select board waives their right of discretion as to put it on the article, put it on the warning or not.
Say that again? What's the 5% get you?
5% is like any town member or anybody can collect 5% of the
signature
voter checklist signatures for their petition to have a petition warrant article on the annual town meeting. And that needs to come to the town clerk's office.
And then what's a 10% get you?
10%, when Bob Penniman was on the select board, they created this because it was like, you know, why does this, if the select board has the discretion to say if it's town business or not. So if it's just like a random article. Like,
So you're saying that if it's a 5% petition, the select board can reject it. But if it's a 10% petition, then the select board has
Jericho
no say.
select board has waived their discretion.
So with 5%, you're not a warrant article
Unless the select board also thinks it's a good idea to put it on.
So 5% gets you in the door of the select.
Pitch your idea to the select board.
Although.
But I could also go to the select board and pitch an idea. They're like, that's a bang up idea. They can put that in. I don't quite get that.
Right, that happens.
Any one person can go and, hey, we should do this. And they go, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then they put it, like, I can get something on the warrant meeting myself. No.
Yeah, so if someone's acting in that behalf, they should be doing it in December. You know, so that if they're then checked, if the select board was like, no, we need to get this petition, you would have time to get the signatures.
So I have a question about process. Let us say we came up with a proposal with some at least supporting evidence for the wisdom of it. And we brought it to this group and pitched it, and the majority agreed. The next step is to bring it to the select board.
Mhm.
And if but they have the discretion to say, no, we don't
Right.
think.
The select board is the group that sets the whole policy about penalties and what's the word? Penalties and fees.
And
But is that, sorry,
let us say that they did say no.
Mhm.
Thanks very much, but no, we're not going to do that. Could we, and I won't define who we might be, but could we then get petitions and bring it directly with the appropriate number of signatures, bring it directly to the voters of Jericho at the town meeting if we got that 10% number? I'm hoping that wouldn't be necessary, but is that an option? Did I follow this?
I don't think the Board of
Correctly.
Abatement would do that. I would think that Kathy Paris.
Right, yeah, I think the Board of Abatement would just submit something to the select board.
A
And then the
recommendation.
and the select board would take whatever action they deemed wise. Kathy Paris or Kathy Paris and Peter together could go out and circulate a petition and meet the thresholds Jessica was talking about, I guess. And have it be a direct vote by the citizens, and the select board at a town meeting could say, this was already brought to us and here are the reasons we think it's not good for our town. And you can speak at town meeting and say, this is why we think it should happen. And then there'd be a vote.
I think that's what happened in Heinsberg. There was an individual in town who was against the 8% penalty, and it became a petitioned article on town meeting. Because I think any changes to the delinquent tax policy become warrant items on the town meeting.
That's what I was going to ask was, can the select board say like, yep, great idea, that's our new rule? Or can the select board say, yes, this sounds good, let's put it on the town meeting and have it voted
It has to
on?
be voted on.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's also down the road. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah, I think
Now.
clearly the first step is to come up with a proposal.
Okay.
I believe that it's at that point, I believe it's the discretion of the board. Because one of the things the board decided to change a couple of the tax policies, although I'm trying to think whether it was actually voted by the town. For example, in the past, it used to be that it had the payment had to be in the town. Post date, didn't matter when the postage date was, it had to be in the town. So if it was late, if it arrived late, you pay the penalty. Then it was changed, and I remember that was painful because I remember writing personal letters to people saying, well, here's been explaining the policy. But then it was changed, so at least the postage date, the date of the envelope.
So that is on the warning every year.
It is, isn't
It
it?
has the tax due dates, and then it also says postmark, etc.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
postmark,
And there's been
accepted.
discussion at town meeting about postmarks.
Yeah.
So I have another question, and that is, do you know, Jessica, of any town other than Heinsberg that has voted to eliminate the 8% penalty?
Some only have 5%. Colchester and this is just from my little Chittenden County survey. Colchester and can't remember the other town, but there are towns, which I think Underhill is one, that they put 8% on every due date, every tax due date, not just the final one.
Okay.
So again, it's all over the
But the
board.
the subcommittee would certainly be able to conduct research.
Yeah, that's right.
And I can pull
Yeah.
through the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association too. I can help collect
collect from
info.
the.
Yeah.
That would be great. That's what I meant about it. Would be important, I think, to not just bring, hey, we think this is a good idea, but evidence from what has happened when similar approaches have been taken in other towns.
Yeah, Heinsberg's the only one that I know that has no penalties and interest.
at all.
Oh, well, let me just say, I think there's a big difference between
Yeah.
penalty and interest. Interest is, as everyone here knows, is essentially money that town is losing by not having those taxes on hand, which is, and I think we would all expect to pay interest if we were late on a financial obligation, but that's not the same as the 8% penalty starting like the hour after it was due. And that's what I'd like to focus on. Peter, we can.
Yeah, so why don't Kathy and Jess and I can get together and talk about what we.
Right, we don't need to get into the mud tonight.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, it's good to know that what the process is like and that the board would. You asked earlier, Mike, if there should be a motion to either charge a grouplet or to approve the grouplet going to work. I don't know whether that's necessary or desirable, but
I think that,
I think if philosophically we're looking at it as some citizens of Jericho are getting together to draft a policy that they want to present to the Board of Abatement, we don't need to approve that or disapprove it. You know, if it was just a couple of people that weren't even on the board,
well, true. If we weren't even on the board, then
I don't think you need permission from the board, listening to what I've heard
make a
tonight,
proposal.
to set your ideas on paper. Yeah,
okay, so we're not acting as a subcommittee charged to investigate the idea. We're operating as two citizens that happen also to be on the Board of Abatement. Am I reading you correctly?
that's my interpretation, but that's only me.
Okay.
I
And I
mean,
don't
my,
know.
my sense is that it's reasonable for us as a board to say, hey, this is something we'd like to learn more about. We want to bring it back to the board at a later date. At that point, we can decide whether the board has the authority or is in the right place to take action or not. But I do think it's reasonable for the Board of Abatement to have a better sense of this situation and to maybe get do some analysis about our policy and come up with some proposals, and we can then determine whether we want to take an official position as a board or whether we're able to or whether we think that maybe the folks that did this work should continue this separately without an official endorsement. So I think we're kind of at a place where we're investigating, and then we'll go from there.
I like what Tom said.
Other Tom, yeah.
I thought I heard at some point in the past that an 8% penalty is set in state law. Is that? No.
That is like the 1976 or something. 74. That there is an 8% written into the law, but it can be amended.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's sort of a default.
I have no knowledge.
Yeah, we 2 years ago, we were kind of looking into that, and it was really not a very clear path.
No.
Even as to when Jericho adopted the 8% penalty.
It was tough to find out.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it's even in the law. And I don't know if the law would say may or shall.
It's not a shall.
That would be an important thing to.
But I would say it's not that important because there are towns that have 5% and no percent, and so I don't think we need to put a lot of time into figuring out what the state law says, given that there's towns, the wild west, it seems like, in terms of what towns are doing. I think that towns can do whatever they want with it, within reason. Well, within reason.
Okay.
Well, I
Shall we
look
move
forward
on
to seeing what the group comes up with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bueno.
Is anybody interested in being on a subcommittee that revises the abatement request form?
That's changing the language on the form where there's the list of reasons and we said,
Perhaps explaining them.
Explain it.
yeah.
So just to give a little history about that form, it was actually adopted the Barre town, because there's Barre City and Barre Town. It was the Barre Town clerk that shared the form with me, but there is a model policy through Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And that's when we use that model to sort of create our Board of Abatement policy, as well as there's sort of a sample form. So our form is kind of patterned after the Vermont League of Cities and Towns form. Before we had a form, it was just a letter written by the taxpayer, and that was even harder to discern what they were asking for and why. Because I remember we had that discussion, like someone checked off, they wanted it because of hardship, something related to mobile homes, mobile home park, because they like the wording in it. And then that doesn't even apply to Jericho because we don't have a mobile home park.
So there was just no guidance whatsoever about how to approach, how to pitch your argument.
So there actually is the Secretary of State's book about abatement. So that's a resource on the website for the taxpayer, but you saw even we have trouble trying to interpret that. And hopefully the Secretary of State would come out with a new revision or offer new
if we gave examples or we changed the language so that it was more guidance than just language, I'd be very concerned about our role in interpreting the law to the public in Jericho. And so if we tried to define what a manifest error is, for example, I think we have enough trouble trying to get that straight within ourselves.
Right.
If you put it down in writing and then disseminate it. The other thing to think is that it's up to the taxpayer to present their argument and to convince us. We're not on the side of the taxpayer. We don't need to make it more difficult for taxpayers, but we are an independent body.
I've thought about that because you said that at some point earlier, and I've thought about that. And I guess I disagree in that we are, in part, we are the judge, essentially, right?
Right.
But I do think that as a board, maybe a board of civil authority rather than a board of, but whatever, as a board, that we serve the public. And that if we have a document that is not really useful to the general layman, I think that we're talking about a piece of Vermont statute, right? And I feel like someone shouldn't need to hire a lawyer to appeal their tax situation. So I do share your concern about if we put stuff in writing, what you said right there, like we begin to interpret it. I have concerns about that, but I do disagree that it's like, it's on you guys. Like, hey, you want to board your tax? Like, go ahead and you start reading the Vermont statute and you figure out the laws that were changed and you call the Secretary of State. I don't think that's not how I want to sort of do business as someone who serves on a town board. I want to facilitate when situations, when taxes should be abated for a legitimate reason. I want to facilitate that not facilitate for them, but I want to make every effort to make it as easy and digestible for a taxpayer as possible, rather than like, oh, there's the law. Let us know if you have any questions. I don't like that sort of stance, I guess, for the board.
Can I speak for a minute, Jess?
Hold on, Lori.
Yeah, I just want to say maybe we should, I love the idea of reworking it and trying to make it work for everybody, but that maybe a step back and an email to the town's attorney and just asking her advice, and has she seen this done, and to what extreme can we take it or not take it? I just think some advice would be before we spend a lot of time and a lot of words and find out we can't do it.
That can be part of the group.
If there is a group.
Right. If it happens.
I don't have volunteers yet. Michelle.
was just asking if, when you do your taxes, there's the wording of the tax document and then there's explanations. Like, can you, instead of having it on the form as this is what you're checking off, have a separate document or a separate thing that is more explanatory of what language means? And then I guess that would be a thing to ask the lawyer as well, but then you're not putting it on the actual form that they're signing.
So the Secretary of State does have that booklet, I think
Okay.
18 pages maybe, about abatement. And I don't know that we would have any more revelation than.
Well, could we summarize
Oh, I was
it?
gonna say, if we could just pull out phrases and sentences here and there.
Could we just reference it?
I would like, sorry, Kathy.
Oh, sorry, I just want to say that I think that the clarity is always for the good, right? And if we're not maybe interpreting, but just providing clearer language, that seems like it would be a service that doesn't favor the taxpayer or disfavor the taxpayer. It just makes it less of a guessing game.
I do think Lori's right that whatever we produce would need to be shown to the lawyer and make sure we haven't inadvertently exposed ourselves in some way.
Or, the Vermont League of State and Town guidance about the sample one. I know having a form is better than not having a form as far as when people come to the counter and they're like, oh, I want to get my taxes abated. How do I do that? My first thing is, well, you need to make a request, and these are the reasons that we can legally abate. Some people have no clue, that we're only tied to those 8 reasons, and they think, just for any reason. Well, of course, we don't know now. We've done before. It could be any reason. Right. But
If we were to, my thought is if we're seeking to revise that, I think those reasons are pretty straightforward. We don't want to introduce anything other than what's on there now. And quite honestly, if we think back, the only one that we've had occasion to debate is number 4. The other reasons are pretty straightforward. Now, if within that context, if there's a better way for a reference, okay, but we don't want to stray beyond what's already there. We'll be a little careful in that because those are the reasons. I wish I had my book, which is upstairs.
Is there an interest in forming this subcommittee? Are there people that are interested in pursuing this?
Whether it's to volunteer or to be recognized, I noticed Tom had his electronic hand up.
Oh, Tom.
Thanks, Kathy. And I can answer the question. I'd be happy to jump on this. And I agree that what we don't want to do here is create another form or another, resource or complicate what we have right now. But I do think that it makes some sense for this board to take a look at. The form asks some questions and see what we think we might need to do. And it could be an explanatory thing on a website. It could be changing the form. But I'm happy to do this.
Is there anybody else?
I can help out in the areas because I can reach out to my district advisor and get some advice and some experiences that she's had with this issue. So I could get some examples from her as well.
It would be, that's helpful, Lori, because I think it would be interesting to see if there's an appreciable difference in what other towns have as a forum. So just that in itself is, as I think you were explaining before, just gather the information, see what others are doing. It's always good for us to do that.
and that new outlook as far as using plain language, I think is a coming trend. So there may be more suggestions coming from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns as well.
I just pulled up the 5 bullets in the VSA, whatever statute thing. Number 3 says taxes or charges of persons who are unable to pay their taxes or charges, interest, and collection fees.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Like, who's that? Like, I can't afford it.
Someone who truly is unable to pay their taxes.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, we had.
Yeah, that's the indigent item.
We had a
Some.
situation where there was a.
Oh, and we were saying, is this a 1-year thing or is this a forever situation? Okay,
It's a
yeah,
temporary.
yeah,
situation.
right, yeah. Is this
It
just,
can't be a
it can't be
7-year
like,
situation.
right, okay, yeah, thank you, sorry.
Is there anybody else that's interested in joining Tom and Lori?
I would be.
And Jessica.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it to them to get themselves organized and,
And then there's members that aren't here tonight. They may.
right, but that'll be in the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe you could
That
highlight,
is a bit.
maybe you can highlight both those things in the email directly, like
Yeah.
that, if people are interested in either one of these
If you
two.
want to join.
Yeah, for either the abatement one,
So I will be revising the form for 2023. Probably around the March 15th due date. So that would be a good
marker.
target date to shoot for. But yeah, I welcome the help.
I would say it'd be great for us, for both of these grouplets to come back at the same time. And it sounds like the first one needs to come back before what is it, January 19th or whatever. So maybe we just try to do it on a similar timeline if at all possible.
Yeah, that makes
Sounds
sense.
good.
That makes sense.
That's a good
Is there-
segue. Yeah.
Is there any other business that needs to happen tonight?
I just put 2 bullet points on there that I did not discuss. I apologize that our last meeting was rushed. I was trying to make it so I had a guaranteed quorum, but the shortage on time, at least I learned how to make a breakout session on Zoom. But one thing that the Board of Abatement does not do is abate the late filing of homestead fees. This is when people don't file their homestead declaration with their tax due date, their income tax due date to the state, April 15th. And then it seems to go on throughout the calendar year. But how it impacts the town is that tax bills get revised when people finally do file their homestead payment. And if people request that fee that's associated with it to be abated, that actually goes to the select board.
What fee?
Is it 3%?
Yeah.
There's a 3% fee that gets put on the education tax if you file your homestead declaration late. And that tax is kept by the town to pay for all of this extra work that's being done because the homestead declaration was filed late.
Is that an automate? Is that a Jericho thing?
It's a state law, but then the Jericho Select Board has the option to put a fee on or not. And so that's why the Select Board hears if the fee is abated or not. So like in 2020, there were some towns that the Select Board had put on the fee, but they chose to abate the fee because of COVID.
Because 3 years in a row, I haven't filed taxes for my daughter who lives in Essex. And every year we got a tax bill. I go, oh, wait, crap, I didn't do the homestead thing.
Oh, so she owns a home.
She owns a home. And I go to the town, they say, yep, fill your homestead thing in and we'll generate a new bill for you. But we never pay a fee for that.
Well, you should look at it. There
No, we don't. We definitely don't pay a fee for it.
on the revised bill, it will show the lower
The new amount.
education tax.
Yeah.
But there also is
Is
a
a fee in
friendly,
there?
the 3% fee.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Yeah.
I would say no, there isn't, but
Yeah.
probably you're right.
So anyway, that's different than the Board of Abatement. And then, of course, tax appeals are not heard by the Board of Abatement. Tax appeals is when someone's complaining about their assessed value of their property. And that's heard by the Board of Tax Appeals, which the BCA is a part of. The JPs, the town clerk, and the 3 select board members. And it also includes the listers if the listers are not part of the appeal. sometimes they're a party in the appeal. So anyway, I was just trying to say that those are different than the Board of Abatement. And discussing procedure, I did listen to a Zoom in a meeting that was put on by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, an attorney there, about the Board of Abatement, and he brought up that you do not need a motion to go into deliberative session. It sort of is understood if you are finished hearing the taxpayer's request that you would fall into deliberative session. And it just so happens at our last meeting, which was rushed, we didn't have a formal motion to go into deliberative session or come out of deliberative session, but it
Turns out that was
turned
okay.
out we didn't need it. Yeah, so it's not I think it's a helpful thing because people are aware of what's going on, but it was nice to hear that we were legal last time. And I'm hoping the Secretary of State's office will update their guidelines that about abatement, I think goes back to 2014. So it would be nice to have an updated guideline, which might address reason number 4. Although I don't think anything's gone to court. You know, it sort of needs to be addressed at Superior Court, right? That's all I have.
Does anybody else have anything more?
No.
Peter?
Yes.
Oh, you usually make a motion as soon as I say that.
Yeah. You need to set a next meeting date.
Do you want to set a next meeting date pending any reports that may be available? Set a date?
Is it
at that time?
helpful for the committees to have it?
You know, they may end up, they may end up finding that they have to do more research, and this isn't going to be a project that even finishes in terms of town meeting for
Okay,
this year.
so wait on that.
I would say, see what you get from the people that are on these committees to say,
Okay,
I would say make it 2 months.
2
Like
months
December,
is-
like December 8th, like December single digit. And 2 months and like, there's now, I mean,
okay,
put your head down and get to work. I mean,
we are planning a BCA meeting those first 2 weeks of December too, but they would probably be on different nights.
yeah,
just so it's all a long night.
yeah.
No, it's good for me to have a due date, so that's good.
That's my feeling too. Like, I know it's 2 months. I gotta,
Peter, I'm going to be out of the country for 3 weeks
okay.
from 13th of October to the 6th of November, but I'm happy to get and would
Sure.
like to just get on it as
Yep.
soon as
Yep.
back. So.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second to
Second.
adjourning?
Second.
Any discussion about adjourning? Is there anything else? All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye.
You, Aaron.
Opposed? Nobody's opposed to go.
Nobody's.
Thank you, Aaron, for helping with the
Okay, thank you all.
Zoom.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.